Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists physicians with employment contract issues. Today I'm going to talk about what is the difference between claims made and occurrence-based medical malpractice insurance. This is absolutely a topic that I generally talk to almost anyone about when I'm reviewing their contract. Those coming out of training never really had to worry about this before. I find don't really understand the differences between the two. And even those that have been out a while just don't know the difference. So let's kind of break down each one, and then we'll kind of compare the two, and maybe if you had the choice, which one would you want to go with? So first, what's claims made insurance? So claims made medical malpractice insurance means that a policy has to be in effect when the claim is actually made. So why this is important: if a physician leaves an employer, then there will be a gap between when they leave and then the last day that someone can sue that physician. In most states, it's 2 years. And then and most states also define that as 2 years from when the patient either knows or should have known of the incident that generates the malpractice claim. So it's theoretically possible to go beyond the 2 years, although it's very unlikely that that would happen. So that means because the claims made policy ends when the physician leaves the employer, they need another policy, a gap policy, or what we call tail insurance, that covers that gap in between when they leave and then the last day that someone can sue when the statute of limitations runs. So in this case, let's talk kind of cost and then how often the physician has to pay for it. So if a physician works for a hospital, medical network, that type of thing, they will almost never have to pay for tail, because usually in those situations, the employer is self-insured. If a physician works for a smaller physician-owned group, I'd say most of the time in those scenarios, the physician will be the one responsible to pay tail. Now, cost. A good rule of thumb is tail insurance costs about twice what your annual premium is. So the annual premium is how much the employer pays for your insurance each year. So let's say your primary care. Most states' primary care will be an average of around $6,000 a year. So if the physician was responsible for tail, then just multiply that times 2. Their tail cost would be about $12,000. And that's a one-time payment. It's usually paid prior to the physician leaving or simultaneous to the date of termination. They pay the $12,000. They're covered for the gap. Some tail insurance policies are generally a specific amount of time. Some of them will just state they will cover until the statute of limitations in that state ends. So that's generally what the cost is, and then what tail insurance is, and then what claims made insurance is. Now, let's talk about the other type of insurance, occurrence-based insurance. So occurrence-based insurance just means a policy has to be in effect when the incident occurs. So not when the claim is made, but when it actually happens. So obviously, if someone is employed, the event is going to occur while they are employed. And so a tail policy is simply not needed for an occurrence-based insurance policy. So why would anyone get a claims-made policy instead of an occurrence-based policy? That way they can avoid having to get 2 separate policies. Well, it's cost. So once again, a good rule of thumb is occurrence-based insurance is generally about 33%, so a third, more expensive than a claims-made policy. So if someone had, once again, like a primary care and they had a $6,000 annual premium, if they had occurrence-based, then it would be $8,000. For the physician, certainly, if the employer is giving them the choice, then they want occurrence-based insurance because then they won't have to pay for tail when the contract terminates. However, I find that most private, small physician-owned groups do not pay occurrence-based coverage. They pay claims-made coverage just because it's cheaper, and they want to give, kind of put the responsibility for tail coverage onto the physician. Just saves them money. An occurrence-based policy certainly would make more sense for a physician, but cost is also an issue. So usually if there is a choice, then you need to do the calculation of, all right, how long am I going to stay with this employer? And then whether me paying a third more, if you're the one that has to pay, which usually you don't, me paying a third more each year would kind of offset having to pay twice what the annual premium is down the road when you have to pay for tail. So if the physician has the choice, certainly go with occurrence coverage. If they're not paying for it, if the employer's going to pay for it, then go for occurrence. If not, then, then the kind of the negotiation part of this goes into, all right, well, if I do have a claims-made policy, then who's going to pay for tail after the agreement ends? Depending upon specialty, this can be a critical part of the negotiation. For instance, if someone's like an OBGYN, their tail costs and their annual premium costs are significant. So I've seen some tail costs for an OBGYN, $50,000, $80,000. It's not an insignificant amount of money. And so bargaining over who is responsible for that can be a huge part of the negotiation. Some employers will get creative and they'll say, all right, well, if you stay for 1 year, we'll pay for, a quarter of the tail policy, and then 2 years, half. And then so if you get to 4 years, we'll pay for all of it. So tiering it up. One, it incentivizes the physician to stay because then they don't have to pay for it at the end. And then two, it's just kind of fair that both parties would kind of share the cost. Some place will do 50-50. So, all right, well, if you do leave, we'll pay half your tail, you pay half the tail. And then you can move on. So that is the difference between claims made and occurrence-based medical malpractice insurance for physicians. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have any questions, you can call us and at the phone number listed below in the description. Or if you have another question, you can always reach us through our website, ChelleLaw.com. That's CHELLE law.com. And hopefully that was helpful. Appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.